Hey there folks, MantaRay79 here, and I'm back with another deck profile video for the Cardfight Vanguard trading card game. In today's video, the deck profile I'm going to be doing one for is G standard formats, Kagero's, Dragonic Overlord, the Destiny. Alright then, let's get started. Alright, first off, the main deck. For the cards in this main deck, we have the starting unit, Grade 0, Lizard Soldier Conroe. The Grade 0, Lizard Soldier Conroe. In my opinion, he's the best starting unit for the Kagero clan in the whole G standard format. For you see, his skills are, as a Forerunner, when ridden on top of, you can move your Lizard Soldier Conroe from the soul to your rear guard. And his second skill, by paying 1 counterblast and retreating Conroe from your rear guard, you can search your deck for any grade 1 or less Kagero unit and add it to your hand. Ideally, this card can be used to add a perfect guard to your hand, or perhaps any other grade 1 that can support in your later game strategies, like maybe a stride fodder or a counter charger. Alright. Next, let's move on to the grade 1 lineup. For the grade 1s in this deck, we have 4 Lizard General Conroes, 3 Spear of the Flame Dragon Tars, 2 Doombringer High Flames, and 4 Protect Orb Dragons. The grade 1 Lizard General Conroe. By my opinion, he's a must-have for any Kagero Dragonic Overlord deck for the G standard format. For you see, his skills are, when called from your hand to the rear guard, by revealing 1 grade 3 from your hand, you can search your deck for any card with Overlord in its name and add it straight to your hand. After that, discard 1 card as a cost. So basically, this first skill will help you secure your hand to get the specific Dragonic Overlord to ride when you go to grade 3. And his second skill is, by retreating Conroe from your rear guard, you can then give your Vanguard Overlord a skill. Whenever your Vanguard Overlord attacks, you can countercharge too. Thus, you can more or less restock on costs for high cost counterblasts when you pay for skills. The grade 1, Spear of the Flame Dragon Tar. His skill is Generation Break 1, Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1. You choose any of your other units besides Tar and give it 4,000 power and a skill. The skill is, when the unit of this skill attacks, you can check the top 5 cards of your deck for a grade 3 or greater Flame Dragon. Thus, by giving it to your Vanguard Overlord, which can attack multiple times, you'll be able to increase your hand with grade 3 Flame Dragons that you can use for stride costs on your next turn, or for hand costs for cards like Dragonic Overlord, the Ace. The grade 1, Doombringer High Flame. He's more or less the Overlord series, a substitute for a stride fodder in the G standard format. For you see, his skills are, when called from your hand to the rear guard, by moving 2 Overlords from your drop zone to the bottom of your deck, you can fill 2 different effects. If 1 or less cards were moved from your drop zone to the deck, you can shuffle your deck. And if up to 2 cards were returned, you can then shuffle and draw 1. So basically, he's a replacement for Calamity Tower Wyvern, who lets you draw 1 card by paying a cost. And his second skill is, at the beginning of your ride phase, by moving Doombringer High Flame from your rear guard to the drop zone, you can give your Vanguard a skill. It can stride a Overlord G unit without paying any cost. So, like I said before, he's a more or less a substitute stride fodder for the Overlord series. The grade 1, Protect Orb Dragon, Sentinel, Perfect Guard. In my opinion, he's out of all the Kagero perfect guards in both the original and G standard formats, he's by far the best. You see, when Protect Orb Dragon is placed in the Guardian Circle to guard with, if you already have another copy of Protect Orb in your drop zone, you can then countercharge one. So like Lizard General Conroe, he's more or less mainly used to increase the amount of counterblasts you can make for high cost skills like maybe the Ace or Denial Griffin or any other cards that mainly use counterblast in the G standard Kagero decks. Alright, that just about covers it for the Grade 1 lineup. Next, let's go to the Grade 2 lineup. For the Grade 2s in this deck, we have 4 Emperor Dragon Knights Nehalims, 4 Perdition Dragons Dragonic Neoflames, and 3 Burning Horn Evolutes. The Grade 2 Emperor Dragon Knight Nehalim. His skills are Generation Break 1. If your Vanguard is an Overlord, throughout your whole turn, Nehalim will get plus 2000 power. And he has another skill. Whenever your Grade 4 or greater Vanguard attacks, Nehalim gets plus 5000 power till the end of turn. So he's basically a good card to combo with either Dragonic Overlord the Legend or Dragonic Overlord the Ace, since on his own, Nehalim can serve as either a 16,000 power or 21,000 power attacker on his own. Grade 2 Perdition Dragon Dragonic Neoflame. The Legion Mate 4 Perdition Emperor Dragon Dragonic Overlord the Great. His skill is, on the turn he was called to the rear guard. Whenever the rear guard in the same column as Neoflame was retired, you can pay 1 counterblast and retire 1 more rear guard in the same column. So basically he's focused on his own, as a rear guard, he focuses on retiring your opponent's rear guards in the same column as the one he was called on. The Grade 2 Burning Horn Evolutes. His skills are, when called onto the rear guard, and by revealing 1 Grade 3 Overlord in your hand, you can pay 1 Soul Blast and retire an opponent's rear guard in the same column as Burning Horn Evolute. And his second skill is a continuous ability. If your Vanguard is a Grade 4 with Dragonic Overlord in his name, you can then give Burning Horn Evolute 2000 power for every card in your opponent's damage zone. So ideally, as long as you've got a Vanguard with Overlord in its name and you've straight into Grade 4, you can give him at most 10,000 power if you've managed to put your opponent to 5 damage. And with that just about covers it for the Grade 2 lineup. Next, we go to the Grade 3 lineup of this deck. For the Grade 3s in this deck, we have 4 Dragonic Overlord the Destinies, 3 Perdition Emperor Dragon Dragonic Overlord the Great, and 2 Dragonic Overlord the Legend. The Grade 3 Dragonic Overlord the Destiny, the main Grade 3 of this deck. His skills are, at the beginning of your ride phase, by paying 1 Soul Blast, you can choose any rearguard circle in either player's field, and then all cards on that circle will be sent to the drop zone. So the Destiny's first skill is almost omnipotent, seeing as how it can be used to remove either locked cards or cards of the resist ability from the rear guard. And then there's the Destiny's second skill. When stridden on top of, by paying 1 counterblast, you can retire an opponent's rear guard and check the top 7 cards of your deck for a Grade 3 Dragonic Overlord and add it to your hand. So the first two abilities of the Destiny will help you clear out your opponent's field, and his Stride skill will let you increase your chances of having another Overlord in your hand to use the hand cost for either Dragonic Overlord the Purge or Dragonic Overlord the Ace, or maybe you can save that card for next turn as your stride cost. The Great 3, Perdition Emperor Dragon, Dragonic Overlord the Great. His ability is a Legion. By sending 5 cards from your drop zone to your deck, you can search your deck for his intended Legion mate, Perdition Dragon, Dragonic Neoflame, and Legion it onto the Great. And then his Legion skill is, after attacking an opponent's rearguard, by counterblasting one and discarding 2 cards from your hand, you can restand your Vanguard. So the Legion skill is pretty powerful on its own, but I think the best part of Legion is that you'll be able to restock your deck with triggers. And then there's the third ability of the Great. Whenever the Great attacks hits, you can send any card from your own rearguard that's the same name as your Vanguard from the rearguard to the drop zone and retire another of your opponent's rearguards. So basically, if you've already Legioned with Dragonic Neoflame, you can then use either your rearguard, the Great, or Neoflame to retire an opponent's rearguard whenever your Vanguard, the Great, attacks hits. The Grade 3, Dragonic Overlord the Legend. His skills are Generation Break 2, Counterblast 1, and discard a Grade 3 Flame Dragon from your hand, and then when this cost is paid, your Vanguard, the Legend, will get plus 15,000 power, plus 1 grade, and plus 1 drive, and it gets a skill. After attacking the opponent's rearguard, by discarding 3 cards from your hand, you can restand the Legend for another attack. And then there's the Legend's second skill. When ridden, by paying 1 Counterblast and 1 Soul Blast, you can check the top 5 cards of your deck and add any Flame Dragon among them to your hand. Basically, this skill will let you add either a Grade 3 Dragonic Overlord who can be used to pay for the Generation Break for the Legend skill, or you can also use it to maybe add a Stride Fodder like Lava Flow Dragon, or perhaps even a Perfect Guard like Protect Orb Dragon. So overall, the second skill is more or less good for helping you to build up your hand for any combos or strategies or any specific cards you want to get. You can have a better chance of adding them to your hand with this ride skill. So, alright, that just about covers it for this deck's Grade 3 lineup. Next, let's go to the Trigger lineup. For the Trigger lineup of this deck, we have 4 Dragon Dancer Palomas, critical triggers. 2 Dragon Dancer Tikas, critical triggers. 2 Fire Chase Dragons, critical triggers. 2 Seal Dragon Art Peaks, draw triggers. 2 Gatling Claw Dragons, critical triggers. 4 Dragon Dancer Taras, heal triggers. 'The Grade 0, critical trigger, Dragon Dancer Paloma. Her skill is, when paid as a hand cost for striding, she becomes a Grade 3 for that cost, so she's more or less a substitute stride fodder for Lava Flow Dragon, and a must-have to have for your nowadays G Standard or Premium decks for the Kagero clan. The Grade 0, critical triggers, Dragon Dancer Tika. Her skill is Generation Break 1. Whenever your Vanguard attacks, by moving her from your rear guard to your soul, you can draw 1 card and give one of your Vanguards plus 10,000 power for that battle. So, like the other critical triggers in the G Standard format, like Dragon Knight Janat, let you move your critical trigger from your rear guard to your soul to draw one card and add power. She's a good way to stock up your soul and increase your Vanguard's power and to add your hand with more cards. The grade 0, critical trigger, Fire Chase Dragon. His skill is Generation Break 1. When an opponent's rear guard in the same column as Fire Chase was retired, by retreating Fire Chase from your rear guard, you can retire another rear guard in the same column. So it's basically like another version of Dragonic Neoflame's skill, which lets you clear out more of your opponent's rear guards in the same column. The grade 0, draw trigger, Seal Dragon Art Peak. His skill is, as a rear guard, by moving him to the soul, you can choose one Kagero unit in your field and give it 3000 power till the end of the turn. So this card is mainly used to either stack your soul with more cards for soul blasting, or maybe give your units, maybe like your Vanguard or rear guard, a little extra power for attacking. The grade 0, draw trigger, Gatling Claw Dragon. His skill is, as a rear guard, by paying one counterblast and moving Gatling Claw from your rear guard to your soul, you can retire any of your opponent's grade 0 rear guards. So he's a good way to maybe remove your opponent's starting unit early in the game, or maybe even to clear any of the critical trigger or draw trigger or any stand trigger rear guards they have that have a skill similar to Tika, like I mentioned. So though the opportunity to use his skill isn't always that often, I still think Gatling Claw Dragon is still a pretty good card to have in your G standard, maybe even premium format Kagero decks, since he lets you wipe out starting units with the Forerunner ability or triggers that can be moved to soul or retired to activate any extra skills. The grade 0, heal trigger, Dragon Dancer Tara. Her skill is, when paid for the cost of a G Guardian, by removing the Tara you use to pay for the cost and another Tara from your drop zone from play, you'll be able to either countercharge 1 or soul charge 1. So for the G standard Kagero decks, she's almost a necessary card to have, since she can be used in conjunction with any of your G Guardians to give yourself an extra counter blast or soul blast later after being used. And with that, the trigger lineup for this deck we have is 8 critical triggers, 4 draw triggers, and 4 heal triggers. I repeat, 8 critical triggers, 4 draw triggers, and 4 heal triggers. Alright, that just about covers it for this deck's trigger lineup and the main deck. Next, let's move to the G zone. For the G zone, let's start out with the G units. For the G units in this deck, we have 2. Supreme Heavenly Emperor Dragon, Dragonic Overlord, the Purge. 3. Supreme Heavenly Emperor Dragon, Dragonic Overlord, the Ace. 2. Flare General, Dumjet Valor. 3. Flare Arms, Ziegenberg. 1. Supreme Heavenly Emperor Dragon, Zanbus Dragon. And 1. Supreme Heavenly Emperor Dragon, Exengrave Dragon. The grade 4, Dragonic Overlord, the Purge. His skill is, by turning one card in your G zone face up, and by sending one grade 3 Overlord from your hand to the soul, you can deal 1 damage to your opponent, and that damage cannot use any trigger effects. So for the Purge's first skill, it's a good way to stock up your soul and to also deal damage to your opponent before attacking. And the best part is, like I mentioned before, that damage dealt by this skill cannot use trigger effects, so your opponent cannot use any draws or heal triggers if you're lucky enough to get one to reduce the possibility of your other attacks for hitting. And then there's also the Purge's second skill, Generation Break 3. the Purge's drive check becomes the same as the number of cards in your opponent's damage zone. So ideally, at most, the Purge's drive check can go for 5 or more if you can at least get your opponent's damage to 5 before making the actual attack. The Grade 4, Dragonic Overlord, the Ace. His skill is, by counterblasting 2 and turning 1 the Ace from your G-Zone face up, the Ace will get a skill. After attacking, by discarding 1 card from your hand and 1 Overlord, you can restand your Vanguard, the Ace, and for that turn, it gets plus 5,000 power. The only downside is when you choose to play this skill, the Ace loses 1 drive, so at most you'll get at least 2 twin drive attacks. But for most people who don't realize, the Ace's ability is stackable, so as long as you can pay the additional 2 counterblasts and have extra cards in your hand, including an extra copy of Overlord or any kind of Overlord in your hand, you'll be able to attack multiple times, at least 3 or more attacks of your Overlord if you can pay the cost. But again, as I mentioned, every time you choose to activate the Ace's cost to give it those restanding skills, his drive gets minused by 1. So if you're the type who likes more attacks than drive checks, the stacking is pretty good. But for basic, you got to go for at least 1 time. The Grade 4, Flare General, Dumjit. His skills are Blaze. Whenever a unit on your field attacks, if you have more rear guards, your Vanguard will be entered into the blazing state for the rest of the turn. Then his second skill is, by counterblasting 1 and turning 1 card in your G-Zone face up, Dumjit gets plus 15,000 power for every Sentinel in your drop zone. So if you've got perfect guards or any kind of Sentinel in your drop zone, and when you pay for this skill, you'll be able to stack at least 15,000 power or more to your Vanguard. And then the third and final skill of Dumjit Valor, once per turn, if your opponent had used a G Guardian or Sentinel against you during the battle phase of the turn, you can then restand your Vanguard Dumjit Valor after giving it -1 drive. So it's not the most easy card to use, but for those of us who like to prioritize restanding your Vanguard, it's still a pretty good card to have. Even just having 2 is basically enough for you if you're a fellow Kagero Overlord player. And then there's the Grade 4, Flare Arm Ziegenberg. His skills are, the first one is Blaze. When, like I mentioned for Dumjit Valor, when attacking, if you have more rear guards, your Vanguard enters the blazing state for that turn. And then there's the second skill of Flare Arm Ziegenberg. By Soul Blasting 1 and turning another Ziegenberg from your G-Zone face up onto the G-Zone, you can retire 1 of your opponent's rear guards. And then the third and final skill of Ziegenberg, Generation Break 3, by paying 1 counterblast. After attacking, and if your Vanguard is blazing, you can discard the same number of cards from your hand as the same number of cards your opponent's rear guards to the drop zone and restand your Vanguard and -2 drive. So ideally, Ziegenberg's restanding skill is at its best if you've managed to reduce your opponent to having 0 rear guards. That way, you won't have to pay any cards from your hand to do the restanding. So cards like the Destiny or any other cards that you retire opponent's rear guards before attacking are pretty good to combo with this G unit. The Grade 4, Supreme Heavenly Emperor Dragon, Zanbus Dragon. His skill is, once per turn, by turning 1 card in your G-Zone face up, you can retire all of your opponent's rear guards, and all Grade 3 and above units on your field get plus 10,000 power till the end of the turn. So it's a pretty simple but pretty powerful card to have. It's great to have in your G Standard or Premium Kagero decks, since it doesn't really cost that much to use. And you know, if you're the type like me who like to use more than the usual amount of Grade 3s in your deck and like to call on Grade 3s to the rear guards, it's a ideal G unit to combo of those Grade 3s. Supreme Heavenly Emperor Dragon, Exengrave Dragon. His skill is Blaze, like Dumjit and Ziegenberg. Whenever a unit in your field attacks, if you have more rear guards, your Vanguard gets into the blazing state. Then there's the second skill of Exengrave. Once per turn, by paying 1 counterblast and turning 1 card in your G zone face up, your Vanguard gets a skill. When attacking, if your Vanguard is blazing, you can retire one of your opponent's rear guards and draw 1 card. Like Zanbus is a pretty simple and basic card to use, and still a pretty good card to have if you want to wipe out your opponent's rear guards. Flip up more cards in your G zone face up to access Generation Break 2 or higher earlier, and to as well as draw 1 card. And with that just about covers it for this deck's G zone. Next, let's go to the G Guardians. For the G Guardians of this deck, we have 1. Heavenly Emperor Dragon, Defeat Flare Dragon. 2. Flamewing Steel Beast, Denial Griffin. And 1. Divine Dragon Knight, Absalam. The Great 4. Heavenly Emperor Dragon, Defeat Flare Dragon. His skill is, when used to guard against an opponent's Vanguard attack, by paying 1 counterblast and sending 2 Grade 3 or above Flame Dragons from your drop zone to the bottom of your deck, you can then target your opponent's back row and retire all the rear guards on it. So pretty much it can be used to at least reduce your opponent's Vanguard's attack power by retiring its booster, and also to reduce your remaining opponent's rear guards attacks by destroying their boosters. Not to mention, retiring all opponents in your opponent's back row is a good way to clear out their field. So overall, I think it's a pretty good G Guardian to have, and having just 1 is more than enough. The Grade 4, Flamewing Steel Beast, Denial Griffin. His skill is, when used to guard against an opponent's rear guard attack, by counterblasting 1, you can retire the attacking rear guard. So it's more or less a perfect guard for rear guard attacks, and it also retires the attacking unit, so that's a good way to clear out your opponent's field, even by a little. So for any Kagero deck, for the G Standard or Premium format, I believe Denial Griffin is at least a must-have if you want to have a decent G Guardian set. And then, the Great 4, Divine Dragon Knight, Absalam. His skill is, when used to guard against an opponent's Vanguard attack, by counterblasting 1, Absalam gets 10,000 shield for every empty rearguard circle in your opponent's field. So if you're the type of Kagero player who likes to retire your opponent's rearguards, this is more or less a good card to have, since alone he can get at most a 50,000 shield boost. And well, even for Overlord decks that don't specialize in retiring rearguards, it's also a good card to have, since even just having 1 or 2 empty circles on your opponent's field, his shield on his own will get pretty powerful. And with that, we've just about covered the deck's G Guardian lineup and G Zone. And with that, we've just about covered everything in this deck profile for this video. And first off, I want to say thank you to the viewers for watching today's video, and to feel free to support by liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing. And if you have any opinions or maybe any advice for anything regarding this card's deck build, feel free to write it in the comments. And I hope you all stay tuned for when I upload more videos in the upcoming future. And with that, I say thank you and see you all soon.